I upload daily NBA content on this channel, so if that is something that interests you, then subscribe. Also drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Also real quick, if you have not yet, there is a new episode of my NBA series that should be out now. If it is not, it's going to be out soon. It depends on how fast I am. We'll find out, won't we? The Cleveland Cavaliers last year were not very good. Yes, that's the same intro as the Pistons, but that's pretty much how I describe it. They were tied for the second worst record in the league, not getting even 20 wins. The only thing of note that happened this year was like Colin Sexton got a little bit better. They were 4-5 in the first 9 games, and then they sucked for the rest of the year. They traded for Drummond because reasons. Their draft pick, Darius Garland, was disappointing, but showed some signs. Their other draft pick, Kevin Porter Jr., was pretty damn good as well. In this offseason, they drafted Isaac Okoro, traded for JaVale McGee, lost Tristan Thompson, and signed Damian Dodson in free agency. And yeah, that was pretty much all they did in this offseason. And with this team trading for Drummond last season and not even attempting to make any big splashes in this year's offseason, I really don't feel like this team has any direction, and it's for that reason, as well as the talent on this roster not being amazing, that makes me believe the Cleveland Cavaliers will be the second worst team in the league in 2021. Let's go over Cleveland's depth chart. At point, they have Colin Sexton. I would start Kevin Porter Jr. at the 2, though I wouldn't be shocked to see them go with Garland. I think Kevin is better now and will be better in the future, but with the Cavs using the 6th overall pick on Garland, I could see them not wanting to bring him off of the bench, but I'll leave it as KPJ for now. Small forward is Isaac Okoro, then Love at the 4, Drummond at center, then off of the bench I have Garland, Damian Dodson, Cedi Osman, Larry Nance Jr., and JaVale McGee. Now that we have the roster rundown, what are these guys actually going to look like on the court? Well, I will say there are a similar level of talent to the Detroit Pistons this year. I just think because this team has been together at least for a year or two for most of the players, it's going to be a little bit better of an on-the-court product. The Detroit Pistons have a lot of new faces. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, there will at the very least be some chemistry on the court. Colin Sexton is a player that I never know how to properly rate. I can say that I'm definitely lower on him than most, or at the very least much lower than Cavs fans, because it seems like a lot of Cavs fans view Sexton as like a future perennial all-star, and really I view him as a more aggressive and more talented Reggie Jackson, who just hopefully isn't an empty numbers guy. He averages a relatively efficient 20, not bad efficiency, not good really either, right in the middle. But I just don't know how high the ceiling for a 6'1", 190-pound shooting guard who is not a playmaker whatsoever, is a horrible defensive player, is a mediocre three-point shooter, and needs the ball in his hands to succeed, aka is not an off-ball player at all, and kind of ball hogs. I don't know how high the ceiling for that player is. Like, it's probably not high. He's good at attacking the basket, has great handle, is a pretty alright mid-range shooter, but unfortunately, his flaws hold back most of those strengths from being as impactful as they could be. I really think Sexton projects to be a great sixth man, or just an above-average starter, and he's certainly not someone that I would want to see my team building their future around. Actually, now that I've said that out loud, I came off as more anti-Colin Sexton than I actually am. I just don't think his ceiling is much higher than where he currently is right now. Kevin Porter Jr., on the other hand, I think is a fantastic prospect, and I think he has future all-star potential and is by far the most intriguing young player on this team. He has what the kids call a bag. On top of that, he has some defensive potential with good size and athleticism. If his jumper gets some consistency, I think he can be an all-star and an absolute steal for the Cavs in last year's draft. Isaac Okoro seems like he is going to be a defensive phenom. Offensively, there is a lot of questions, but if he can be at the very least good offensively, like a good floor spacer or at least an okay one and a transition lob threat, and he lives up to his defensive potential, at the worst, he's a very good good role player and a future all-defensive candidate. In terms of what we can expect from him this year, I'm not expecting all that much, but I will say that it is an improvement because the defense gets a lot better with him replacing Osman in the starting lineup, and the depth gets a lot better because now Osman is coming off of the bench instead of like Alfonso McKinney as the backup small forward. Kevin Love is a pretty good player. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Andre Drummond is someone who my opinion has shifted on in the last year or so. Not necessarily because of anything that Drummond did himself, but rather my opinion shifting on what the value of the kind of player that he is actually is. A center who doesn't do anything at an elite level besides for rebound really just ain't all that worth it for more than a bench role, and I don't think that type of player helps winning all that much, especially when they are a huge part of the rotation and takes a lot of shots. The Cavaliers trading for him was a pretty clear sign to me that they didn't have an exact direction, to say the least. Like, that's just not a move that a rebuilding team does. That's a move that a team content with their peak being a first-round exit does. I know this because the Detroit Pistons built around Drummond for years because they were perfectly content being a first-round exit every year. Darius Garland, I don't think should be given up on. Rookie guards tend to struggle, and when you consider the fact that he missed almost all of his college season with injury, he basically went from high school to the NBA as a 6-foot guard on a team that has a poor structure to help a player like him succeed. Garland was kind of thrown to the wolves, and I think if he can just get his footing, he has a higher ceiling than Colin Sexton to me. And honestly, if I were the Cleveland Cavaliers, I would consider shopping Sexton to see what you can get out of him. Of course, I would wait to see Garland actually take those steps before doing anything like that, but I would not be shocked if Garland ended up being better than Sexton and the Cavs chose him over Sexton. Damian Dodson is someone who I have talked about quite a bit for a 20-minute per game guy on the New York Knicks, but he's a very good three-point shooter. He's not old yet, and the Cavs got him for a very cheap contract, so I definitely like that signing. After that, Osman, Nance, and McGee are all fine role players. On the court last year, this team was 25th in offense in the league and 29th in defense, and if I had to predict how this team performs overall in 2021, I would guess that the addition of Okoro would flip those things. The spacing difference between him and Osman is going to make offense harder for their guards, however, the defensive difference between him and Osman is going to make their defense a good bit better. Now, if we got a breakout season from Garland and or Kevin Porter Jr., then I could see the offense being like 25th again, but it seems like the Cavs don't want to give either the keys yet. They're content with just being bad for now, and they don't really seem interested in making any big moves. This franchise really feels directionless to me. There are some solid young players on this roster with upside. I think Kevin Porter Jr., Darius Garland, and Isaac Okoro all have a really good potential. Colin Sexton and Cedi Osman, I kind of feel are what they are. Like, they can improve, but I don't think where they are now is that different from what their peak is going to be. And then they have these veteran bigs with Kevin Love and Andre Drummond, and I honestly don't know why either of these guys are on this team at this point. They really should have never traded for Andre Drummond in the first place. Obviously, they didn't give up anything significantly for him, but he's just kind of there for no reason, just showing up to collect his paycheck and take shots away from your younger guys. Kevin Love's contract is bad, so moving him is easier said than done, but even then, this is another case of why is he still here at this point? It seems like this front office just is lazy. Love is still an efficient 17 and 10, shot 7% from not 7%. Kevin Love is still an efficient 17 and 10. He shot 37% from 3 on 7 attempts last year as a power forward. You can definitely get back something of value for him so long as you take back a bad contract, which is what you should be doing as a bad team. But no, they seem to be content just dilly-dallying. Though I think this team is going to be better than the Pistons next year, I can confidently say that I would rather be a Pistons fan than a Cleveland Cavaliers fan right now, by a considerable margin. Because the Pistons franchise, at the very least, finally seems to have a clear-cut direction and a plan. The Cavaliers don't seem to have either of those things. Hopefully Okoro ends up being a good pick, hopefully one of Porter or Garland break out, because as of right now, it seems like once again the only hope for the Cavs franchise is for one of their players to carry the organization, rather than the people that are actually at the head of the organization and are running it, because it seems like they don't have the competence to actually do that. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.